Hey everybody, so if you're familiar with my channel, you know how passionate I am over what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now. And so I've been reading a lot on the history, and I want to talk to you about the Yom Kippur War. This book came out just last year, and I want to tell you about it. Today we're talking about 18 Days in October. It was written by Uri Kaufman, who's based out of New York. It was, as I said, it was just released last year, so it's kind of hot off the press. Although it's getting to be a pretty old story, we're going back to the early 70s with the Yom Kippur War, which was mainly the retaliation of the Arab states against Israel after the Six-Day War in 1967. I'm fairly abreast on the history of what's gone on in Palestine, what the main conflict is about from both perspectives, but I think it's very important for me to understand the nuts and bolts of some of the main conflicts. I can't seem to get enough of this story because my heart really goes out to the Palestinians. And of course, I do have some sympathy for the relevance of that region with not so much Zionist, but Jewish affiliation with that land, especially coming out of the Holocaust. I definitely sympathize with that side of the story. I just don't think that it justifies or warrants a Holocaust of its own. So anyway, this is exactly how, if I'm going to read about a war, this is how I want it covered. I found by reading people like, what's his name, Anthony Beaver. He's a very good historian, and I know he's not so much in this topic of Israel, but just reading historians like that on like the Second World War, you get a lot more of a military perspective, really, really intricate reportage on, like, the resolution is right at the level of the footfall of each soldier. And that's just way too high resolution. Sometimes I need to ground it in something much more contextual. So this book has a much better style that way. So this book, you definitely see some of that, what happened on the ground, and the relative capabilities of each nation involved with this war. What I probably enjoyed most was learning more about people like Moshe Dayan or Golda Meir. Especially I was interested in her part of this story, because she was really an Iron Lady. And as much as I disagree with her politics, as much as I disagree with the politics of Israel overall, there's no denying how important she was. And also Ariel Sharon, it shows his background in this war and how it made him the man he was. And you can see his military perspective really shape his politics. And also I have personal friends whose parents served in the Yom Kippur War with Benjamin Netanyahu, who knew him personally. So I have a real fascination with that story. And I think if you understand the mentality of lots of these people who are still around and who are still, incredibly influential in Israeli politics, you'll get a very strong sense of why things are now the way they are. You can't trace all of it back to the Yom Kippur War, of course. Decades packed full of events have happened since then, but it was a very important piece of the story. I would say the thing that stands out to me the most after reading this is you do understand the Israeli psychology a little better of feeling extremely precarious in that part of the world. Most of it is self-imposed, granted, but I certainly understand the psychology of living with this terrorist threat every day. Well, they call it terrorist. Israel is the main source of terrorism in that region today. At least the Palestinians have, by international standards, not my standards, by international standards, Palestinians have at least a claim to self-defense, which Israel doesn't. The UN does not recognize Israel's claim to self-defense in the context of what's going on with Hamas and Hezbollah and, the satellite Arab countries' aggressions against Israel. But of course, most people are not that objective and dispassionate to really look at things in their historical context and separate themselves from their affiliation with the land and their place in that history. You see the same thing here in Canada. Canadians really undermine what was done to indigenous peoples and communities. And you constantly hear these defenses like, well, maybe you should just move back to Europe then if you can't handle your settler colonial history and whatever. And it's like, come on, be more pragmatic than that. Obviously, everyone's moved in their furniture, both in Israel and here in Canada. We've moved in our furniture. We're not going anywhere. But you have to recognize what Canada is sitting on. You have to recognize what Israel is sitting on in terms of what was involved in Canada or Israel or the United States to the south here in constituting that government, that state where it is. There are a whole lot of skeletons in that story. And if you're not willing to acknowledge it and be objective about it, then yes, of course, you're going to have this psychology where it's like you're constantly looking over your shoulder about, what's the terrorist attack going to be today? And instead of using that motivation first to get informed and then second to make peace from an actual position of understanding. So the Yom Kippur War is very important to modern Israeli sensibilities and their psychology in feeling that at any moment their state can be torn away from them. And, while I would never want to see Israel entirely dismantled, I don't mind seeing them dismantled back to the pre-1967 lines. But with that in mind, maybe that fear isn't misplaced. And they should use it to motivate a different kind of politics than they do. So this was really valuable for me in that sense. I learned a lot. So if you guys have an interest in that sort of thing, I would highly recommend you read it. This was 4 stars for me. I gave it on Goodreads. I would definitely stand behind that. You'll enjoy it if you like that sort of history. With that, I'd love to talk to you guys in the comments below if you've read this or if you intend to. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for stopping by. Hey everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you want more like the one you just watched, click the suggested video on this screen. Make sure you subscribe, and to connect with me on my other platforms, my handles are linked below in the description, alright? Take care, peeps. Till next time.